Hello, Extratime.
It's gone to the league not to get a hoy because it damages your reputation. It makes people, when they read it, just laugh at you.
It's simple enough. They're playing in the League One and they're playing in the Europa League and they're credit the game in this country. Maybe we should get Stephen Kenny then to manage the Irish team.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Extratime Football Podcast. Your host Luke Jordan, episode 12 of season 12. Two lads with me again, Macdara and Donal. Lads, how are we?
Very good.
Good, thanks.
Donal, how was the hot seat last week?
It was hot. No, it was good. It was good. Good to get back hosting every so often. And good chat with Dee from Drive 105 as well, just giving us a little bit of a deep dive into Derry City start to the season so far. And the kind of chat and a talk around Rory Higgins and his position, whether he's actually under pressure or not as well. So yeah, it was a good interesting chat with Dee last week too.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of leads into our first kind of topic of today, and that's about Derry City. Maybe start on the field first, Macdara. You were at the game in the Brandywell. On Rory Higgins himself, just leading on to that point, is he under more pressure after that performance last Friday?
Yeah, he was, but then Monday went his way, so that probably alleviated it. But anyone watching the game, because it was live on television, would have heard the boos at full time, and the fact that it was a heavy enough defeat. Now Shamrock Rovers have a good record up in the Brandywell since the redevelopment of the ground. I think it's 12 games, and Rovers have won 8, drawn 3, and only lost the 1 up there. But it was tight enough in the first half. They had a couple of chances. Leon Poles put off a really good save. Derry hit the post, but they were naive in the second half. They were playing quite a high line. And Dylan Watts just picked out a couple of really good passes for Aaron Green, who's in a great vein of form. He's second top scorer in the league with 6 goals behind Pat Hooban, who came on and scored late on to maybe put a better gloss on the scoreline. But a 3-1 defeat was a poor show for them. So yeah, he is under a certain amount of pressure because all the talk is, having won the cup, they were going to step on and challenge, and they made it a bit of a title race last year. And then really the field was actually, okay, with the acquisition of the players that they got this year, particularly Pat Hooban, who has been good, although not fully available all the time to them, that they would really push on. And they haven't really, but the league is very tight and teams can go on a run. They have a squad good enough to go on a run, but they can't afford to be losing, games like that at home to the teams that they're really trying to push on and challenge for the league title.
Yeah, I suppose, Macdara, it was a big performance for Shamrock Rovers in the Brandywell, but I suppose the real talking point was kind of coming from outside the stadium in the end, as it happened with the flares that were and other objects that seemed to be being thrown in towards the away fans from outside the stadium.
Yeah, so I suppose I can talk about it because I was there as an away fan. Shamrock Rovers, Derry had offered Shamrock Rovers, I think, 2 types of tickets. They could have got tickets for the stand, but there would have been less than 100, or they were offered a terrace. So if people are familiar with the ground, the new stand that they built, there's a terrace to one side of it towards where they've demolished behind part of the goal, and they're going to build a new, quite a big, I think 2,000 capacity terrace. So Shamrock Rovers took up that allocation, which was I think about 150. I think they just about sold out that allocation. And so I was standing on the fence, and yeah, there was a firework thrown in over the wall just before kickoff, which went off. It was quite near where Derry have a coffee van selling coffee. Thankfully, no one was hurt. And then there was a couple of things, young lads who were sitting up on the wall, kind of verbal, like shouting stuff in and then throwing stuff in. And then towards the end of the game, yeah, a flare literally went over my head by, less than a metre. People would have seen it. It dropped onto the astrosurface, just not on the pitch. It was the one that some young lads, like less than 10, hopped the fence from Derry, ran down, picked it up and ran it back. I shouldn't laugh because it's so bloody dangerous. But and that delayed. That was at injury time. Paul McLaughlin was the referee. He stopped play. And then the game kicked off again. And then an iron bar that was put in concrete, about 500 mil long, came in over the wall, pretty close to where people were standing. And again, so what to say is, like, the Derry fans were horrified by this. They were shouting at the young lads to stop. Say there was no trouble that I saw inside the ground. This was all stuff coming from over the wall at the high side of the stadium. And you know, I actually thought the stewards dealt with it quite well. They asked the Rovers fans to move in in front of the stand, which meant they couldn't be hit with missiles. And then they asked us just to move into the centre circle. It was all quite calm, and you know, it was a small enough Rovers crew. I think I understand Pats were placed in the stand. I think they got 75 tickets for the game on Monday night. But and then, you know, afterwards there's two exits from the car park. I had driven up. There was one supporters bus that had gone up, and actually one of the gates they kept closed because the PSNI were outside with the sirens going, and by all accounts were getting pelted with stuff as well. So yeah, it's, you know, there's no police inside the ground. That's the way it's done in Derry. You know, if you go to a game at Tug Park or Eamon DC Park, there'll be guards inside the ground, there'll be guards outside the ground. I think the clubs pay for the Gardaí that come into the ground, I think. Whereas if they're outside kind of directing traffic, although I'm sure most of them probably come into the game during the game and whatnot, but there is no PSNI police in the Brandywell. There's lots of stewarding, but I suppose the issue is that stuff is happening outside the ground, and you know, Derry have got a partial stadium closure ban put in place, but suspended. And any away fan who's been to Derry over the last few years has probably had this issue from outside the ground. I think, to be fair, that's been the issue, and it's a policing issue. It's a societal issue. It's probably a little bit of a political issue. Some people may have seen, I'm not going to read it out, but this Derry Youth Ultras group, which talking about opposing the presence of British Crown forces around the Brandywell. I'm not really going to get into that, but at the minute, from Derry City's point of view, is they're having difficulty guaranteeing the safety of away fans travelling up. So, you know, they came out with a very strong statement themselves that they, you know, that they've met with the agencies, the statutory agencies, to discuss enhanced crowd control measures. So, I presume that's the FAI, might be the PSNI as well. You know, they condemn the scenes in and around the ground on Friday night, and you know, they've accepted that they put measures in place for the Pats game. I don't know, Luke, you might be able to inform us. Did you hear anything? Were there any issues on the Monday night? But you know, Derry, you know, if anything like this happens again, that they're going to lose some of their ground to a partial stadium closure, and, you know, a revenue loss from that point of view. And like, ultimately, we want, you know, we've talked about flare issues and people going to games, whether they're working, be it on the pitch as a referee or official, to be you know, go to the game safely. And every away spectator and home spectator wants to go to the game and come away safely. They want to see their team win if possible. Great. But yeah, I felt pretty unsafe, I have to say, on Friday. And I'm not overstating it, but, you know, say the flare went right over my head. You know, there was a family standing beside me, and one of the guys had been, like, he was probably 8 or 9. He'd been the mascot for Rovers. Like, this is you know, whether it's someone my age, someone older, someone younger, doesn't matter. You can't have this. And certainly where the situation is, where away fans were kept, was pretty vulnerable. And I think there's a recognition of that by Derry, and so they rectified that at least on Monday. And you know, if there was no trouble happening outside of the ground, we wouldn't be talking about this issue. But also, it's just to do what they're doing with the ground at the minute, that they're trying to facilitate with the redevelopment, and it means they had to do something different on Monday. Luke, I don't know if you heard anything from people that were up at the game, Pats fans that were up at the game on Monday.
No, I haven't heard or seen anything. But again, I think the follow on your point there, like, Pats fans have won up in the past. There has been issues, and like buses, for example, being attacked. That's well known. You can search your social media feed; it comes up. I remember listening to the voice notes there after the game. I kind of took exception maybe to what Gary McGlynn was saying in terms of comparing the situation. Maybe what happened in Tala and Richmond Park is no different. I think it's slightly different what's happened.
I'd agree when it's
in the
stuff
north.
happening outside the ground.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
And I have to say, I didn't agree with that point at all. I think this is an issue that's been going on for a long time. I don't know whether maybe it's coming to a head now, and sometimes it's not a bad thing as well because it has to be dealt with. Because fans for numerous years have, especially maybe from Dublin close, obviously it's where we live right there ourselves in this region. We hear maybe a bit more often with fans going up, issues with buses, buses being attacked, and to be honest, I don't think it's good enough. And
yeah,
I think we have to be strong. I don't think it's good enough for fans, players to go up these situations and fear like you guys felt on Friday night. I simply don't think that's good enough. And if it is an issue outside the stadium, then the club have to do more. And I understand there is societal issues in the north, and I am very aware of them. But I do think the club itself are aware what they need to do to ensure the safety of fans, and it means extra stewarding outside of the pitch or outside the stadium, and it has to be done. I think Donal wants to come in a slight bit. I think on a question there, Donal, do you want to come in?
Yeah, lads. Well, one point I would make as well is like, what do you think of the FAI's stance on all of this? Obviously, it's tough for Derry City to police it when it's happening outside the ground, and the fans, both home and away fans, are kind of like sitting ducks inside in the Brandywell when stuff is being thrown in over the walls and stuff like that. Obviously, of course, it's not good enough. But do the FAI, do you think, have something to answer to here in terms of maybe people probably thinking that they're a bit lenient in their punishments? I mean, we're seeing a lot. There seems to be a spike in these kind of incidents in crowds throughout this season anyway, and there was a fair bit of it last season too. But we saw a whole stand in Turner's Cross closed because someone threw a plastic bottle onto a pitch, and I mean flares are getting lobbed in over a wall into the Brandywell, and it's a suspended partial closure. Like, do you think they're, Luke? You just said there that we have to be hard on these kind of things to stamp it out, but are we being hard enough, do you think?
No, and I think this is a huge problem. The Shelburne incident, for example, I understand if you don't pick the Shamrock Rovers game because it's on television and it's a big spectacle for Shelburne, top table clash of Shamrock Rovers, but there has to be a full stadium closed. I think what's gone wrong is that the punishment going for these crimes is not severe enough, and until there's this full stadium closure, for instance, like this, like an official being attacked, like fans getting attacked from objects being thrown outside the stadium. I mean, earlier on the season, a Bows fan stupidly threw a flare and hit their own player. Like this is 3 incidents that have happened now in the space of how long is the week, the season going? We record on the 20th of April. It's going 2 months approximately, and we can name 3 or 4 serious incidents that have happened now. Like to read the statement there, Derry City been fined €2,000.
Oh, is that well? They were fined twice. I didn't see the figure, but is that the figure? Is it?
City have also been fined €2,000, £700 over the instance. Like again, and again, like to me, that's just not like what's €2,000? Like, you know.
Well, I suppose they know what's hanging over their heads if they don't resolve it. I think there's no wriggle room now with a suspended sentence, and I think they know it at this case. But I think it comes back to the fact that this is a slightly different incident for a myriad of reasons as we went through, but stuff coming over a wall is very different from people who've bought a ticket and are inside the ground and are lobbing a flare at a match official or their own player.
Look, to me, it's not good enough. I think the FA have to get hard on it. I think they really do. I think you got to get a grip of the situation now. There's been too many incidents with pyro, and I think heard Mark Scanlon, for example, talking about the start of the year. Probably wasn't thinking he was on LI Central. Tom, even like they were asked about kind of safe pyro and stuff. It's illegal in the Republic of Ireland, so their kind of hands are tied. And then using sand can actually create a bomb in certain situations with pyro. Like that's incredibly dangerous. Like, so there's been a lot of incidents this year, and I think it's unfortunately taken away, and it's getting too much bad publicity in terms of what's going on, because there's a lot of good stuff going on in the league at the moment, and we ourselves are following this league so long, and like it's the most positive I've ever been about the league in terms of crowds going up and the football's been better, and then these kind of instances, in my opinion, are just taken away from kind of what's the good stuff going on in Irish football at the moment, which is actually the League of Ireland. Of all the things, the problem child. So
Luke, you mentioned stand there. Is that our next topic of discussion? Talca Park.
Talca Park, yeah. Well, Talca Park, yeah. The pitch. Well, I don't want to talk about the pitch now, but the pitch really didn't come across great on Virgin Media. But I think the game itself, 0-0 draw, probably for a 0-0 draw was a decent game. But I think obviously the big talking point after the game was the Damien Duff and Shane Farrell. Shane Farrell's red card and the Damien Duff comment. Macdara, what you make of do you think he was right to come in hard on him, or do you think it was a bit too over the top, or was it?
I think it was too over the top, but
yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
maybe a measure of frustration as to where he's been with him. But he really threw him under the bus is the term that came to mind. I've heard other people use it as well. And to be so visible, he did it straight away in the TV interview. He was then talking to RT afterwards, did the same. He was then with the written press, which is a good 20 minutes after. Typically, the manager will generally go into the dressing room and then come back out, and he was still having a go at that point. But I did notice today, ahead of their home game on Friday night in Tulka, the match quotes Damien Duff saying, Shane is one of our own. This is his club. He needs us and we need him. I spoke to Shane. He apologized for getting sent off. That's it, done. We move on. I'll also continue to dedicate my life to Shane and the rest of the players. They are my family. So a bit of a reconciliation, which I think is good to see, because I think it's certainly not good for Shane Farrell, and it's not really good for Damien Duff either when that's just so visible. But yeah, to come off the bench and get 2 yellow cards within 12 minutes, but I suppose there's ways of expressing your disappointment without being so blunt and really calling into question his professionalism, even if there are issues. But I think maybe that's just a measure as to where it was. I didn't think it was a great game. The pitch didn't help. I'd never seen so much sand since I went to see Dune 2 in the cinema last month. And it wasn't necessarily a dirty game, but there was a lot of fouls. It was like foul. Shell's got...
It took the flow of the game away, I thought.
Yeah, Shell's got 6 yellow cards, including Duff. Rovers got 4, including one for Bradley. It wasn't a great game. And then Shells were kind of hanging on at the end because they were down to 10 men, and ultimately they were quite happy to take a point. And I think Rovers are as well. They're Shamrock Rovers in the middle of 3 consecutive weeks of Friday and Monday match double headers. So to take 4 points away from 2 away games, they're now playing Galway United at home. On Friday night, they've won the last 21 games against Galway United, and then they play Drogheda United in the back match due to snow on Monday before the double header for the Maybank holiday weekend. So I think 4 points from those 2 away games represented a good haul for Shamrock Rovers, and that's what Stephen Bradley said when he was chatting to the club's media team on the eve of the game.
Yeah, just on the Shane Farrell, when we move on, I think I read a piece from David Snade during the week. He kind of put a snippet of his interview from last year. I think it was with Shane Farrell, and Shane Farrell spoke very openly with the close relationship he does have with Damien Duff, so it's kind of want to put that out there as well, that Shane Farrell's very open about his family situation and so on in the article, and he spoke about Damien Duff being a huge rock for him and supporting him. So again, they do probably have a good relationship. I think for me, and I've seen comments on it as well, I kind of agree with some of the social media comments. It was very Jose Mourinho. I thought that of him, I thought you could nearly call him Jose Light a little bit, the way Mourinho over the years has kind of used the media maybe to get through the players. It has worked for Mourinho in the past, and then obviously we can probably think of spectacular times where it hasn't worked for me. But just thought shades of Mourinho may have come out and Duff there. Donal was moving on a little bit to Sligo Rovers. The AGM was during the week. You were present at it. Do you want to give the listeners a taste of what was said?
Yeah, look, it was reflecting on a difficult year for the club, both on and off the pitch. Really, 2023 was a struggle for Sligo Rovers players and fans and anyone that's in any way involved with the Bitter Red. But recorded a loss of €299,000 for the year. But I suppose the highlight that was really made from looking at the accounts was a record amount raised through fundraising, which was €593,000, which was like absolutely outstanding by any stretch.
Brilliant.
I spoke with David Rowe, the treasurer, afterwards as well, and like he's stepping down after 15 years. So just want to pay tribute to him for the fantastic work that he's done in that time for the club. But yeah, like 500, nearly 600 grand just from people dipping into their pockets is outstanding, no matter what way you look at it. And it's been a thing that's been synonymous with Sligo Rovers throughout their near 100-year history at this stage. Even look at their most recent fundraiser, which obviously wasn't accounted for because we were looking at last year, but they did a fundraiser with Benny the Bull walking from the middle of Sligo town up to the showgrounds, and obviously Storm Catlin hampered that a fair bit when the Galway game originally got called off. But they raised almost €30,000 out of that alone, you know. So it's like I said, it's thing that's been synonymous with Sligo Rovers, but to raise nearly 600,000 is absolutely staggering, to be honest.
Lads, I think we'll leave part one there. Thanks as always. Coming up in part two, we chat to James Rogers about the appointment with Noel King as Dundalk manager this week, so stay tuned.
Get in touch. You can email us at extratimelive@gmail.com or tag us on Instagram using the hashtag League of Ireland or tweet us at Extratime News.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to part two. Did I say James Rogers on the show again? James, how are you?
Yeah, all good. Look, thanks for having me.
I suppose only one place ready to start, but we'll just start with the obvious question. Your immediate reaction to the appointment of Noel King?
The immediate reaction was one of shock, to be honest. I think, like most people, I was in the showgrounds last Friday, had done post-match of which Brian Gartland took it, and you're asking him, you know, did he expect to be in charge next Friday? He didn't know at that stage, and you hop in the car and very quickly it emerges that a new manager's coming in, and it's probably someone that no one sort of envisaged. I said to a few people during the week on Friday evening driving into Sligo, if you'd offered me 500 to 1, I wouldn't have put €1 on them. So that's how sort of out of the blue it was to me. But the owner, Brian Ainscough, decided to make his move and move very quickly to get his man, and it was confirmed on Saturday. So I think it's one that took everyone by surprise, but he's in place now and has a tasty opener against Bows.
Yeah, I think that's probably the overall action really, is that it's been one surprise. In terms of, say, that the process, which I'm kind of interested in, I mean, the application process hadn't ended. So it was, you know, it definitely is Brian Ainscough's man. They have a previous relationship, if I'm correct. They know each other from past times. So he's really put his neck out on the line on this appointment.
Yeah, so I suppose the background is Noel would have coached Brian at home farm back in the 70s, I think, and they've obviously stayed in touch to some degree. It just came as a sort of bolt from the blue. Well, for many reasons, I suppose he didn't apply for it, but it was only last week that the club and I suppose more importantly, maybe the CEO, Peter Halpin, who's a recent appointment of Brian's, put out a statement basically saying that they were welcoming applications and the deadline was Wednesday just gone. So in theory, last Friday, there was still, well, you had the weekend and a few days of this week to get your CV in if interested. So there was in excess of 70 odd CVs in, obviously some better than others, but in the background and I suppose locally we would have been maybe aware that they did approach Stephen Kenny in relation to it with a sizable offer, I'm led to believe, and to the point where it was always a long shot. I probably didn't expect it to go through just because I know Stephen Kenny has ambitions sort of abroad and maybe, with all due respect, higher than Dundalk right now. But he never officially turned it down. There was also feelers put out to the likes of Ian Barraclough, who is currently the Cheltenham town assistant, but he was unwilling to sort of, he did express an interest, but was unwilling to sort of formally talk about it because they're in the process of battling relegation, and but their season does end this Saturday. So definitely thought that might have been a runner in terms of, you know, let him see out the season with them. He's out of contract and see can something happen there. I think because of the delay with both of them, because Kenny never actually came back with maybe a yes or a no formally, I think the owner, without sort of taking Brian Gartland or Peter Halpin's considerations into account, went off sort of last Thursday evening, Friday morning, and took things into his own hands. An approach was obviously made to Waterford to speak to Keith Long. That was rejected, and very, very quickly then moved on to Noel King, who, by his own admission this week, was only too happy to accept the job. I think the only delay he said was he had to just run it by his wife, but yeah, it was obviously something he jumped at straight away. So that was the sort of how the whole thing came about. It definitely took everyone sort of, Brian Ainscough would be in America right now, and it definitely took everyone this side of the Atlantic a bit by surprise, to the point where even the likes of Brian Gartland, who as well as being interim manager in recent weeks, he is the head of football operations. So he was only finding out when players began to find out on the bus as they were leaving Sligo. So it wasn't ideal in that regard. And it hasn't gone down well with the Dundalk supporters, because, with all due respect to Noel, the club had said that they were looking for some League of Ireland experience. And while he has been coaching in recent years and right through in recent decades even, it's 20 years since he's actually managed in the League of Ireland in terms of men's football. And even in his most recent prominent role, it was in the women's game. So it's not a sort of appointment that necessarily inspires or whatever the overall fan base. I think that's fair to say. So, Brian had come in, and listen, I've spoken to you a couple of times this season. I would have said he's done a lot of things right off the field, but this is probably the first major clash with fans, and it sort of hasn't gone down well. So depending on how Noel fares in the job could determine how well the relationship with the owner and the supporters is going forward.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. Like, where's this leave Brian Ainscough if this goes wrong? Which most people are formulating opinions on. I know it's harsh and he hasn't been a match yet as we speak on Thursday night, but most people are just formulating or having the opinion that this is going to go wrong straight away. So, if this doesn't go well for him and the King appointment ends up being a poor appointment, like, where's that leave Brian Ainscough? Especially for the fact you've laid out there that there was a process, there was Manders interested, that probably from listening to you that there would have been far popular appointments, whether it was, say, Ian Barclaw, for example, holding out another week or two to get someone like him in. Like, where's this leave the owner if this does go wrong?
In a difficult place, but ultimately he probably picks up the bill. I mean, the worst case scenario, this always was that Dundalk get relegated. And if that happens, look, it's a blow on several fronts, and perhaps more importantly than anything, financially, because look, the prize money, the rewards, the crowds, etc., all suffer. Sponsorship suffers if you get relegated. So he does pick up the can. And for me, I just maybe a little bit of panic set in how quickly he sought to make this appointment. And I personally didn't think it was needed, because Brian Garton and Liam Birds had taken charge of the side for the last 3 matches, and there was, you could see something building. Like, in like, I think every game at this moment in time, when you haven't won one, every game that Dundalk don't win will be looked at sort of somewhat negatively. But ordinarily, a point at home to Pats, who came into the game third in the table, isn't a bad result. Okay, they lost 1-0 to Bows in the follow-up game, but there was little or nothing in that. Could have really went either way, and I think even the Bows commentators and stuff would have admitted that the Dundalk probably deserved a point in the game. And then to go up to Sligo, a ground that only Shelbourne have won at the season, where Derry and Rovers have drawn in, and to take a point. So in isolation, it's a good point, but I just thought there was a bit more togetherness. There was probably a little bit more attacking threat. Look, goals have been the big problem for Dundalk this season. I thought, I haven't looked this up, but I'd imagine their XG for the game in Sligo was better than any game they played this season. So there was signs that things were sort of moving in the right direction. And, again, with all due respect, I know Bows are on a decent run, but they literally only played each other to be 11 days between this weekend and their previous fixture. So less than a fortnight ago, they played each other in Dalymount, and very little in it. So you'd like to think, right, if it follows that pattern, there'll be very little in it in Oriel, and you have the home support on your side. So I didn't feel there was this need for a sort of panic appointment. But what it has done, as well as sort of anger the support, he sort of hung the staff out to dry to an extent as well, because, they were speaking to people as well, this side, and just one example. Gary Cronin, for example, was in the showgrounds last week doing a bit of a dossier, kind of in the hope of getting an interview this week. And that would be like any of us. If we go for any job, you'd probably be asked to outline how you'll improve the place or make things better, or in football terms, how to get the most out of certain players, or how you're going to approach it. I don't believe that any of that was asked of Noel, which look maybe isn't uncommon when you're sort of headhunted, but it's certainly a big statement to appoint someone who's been out of it for so long. I think it even took Noel by surprise to some extent. You can't blame him for taking it, but I think at some point the owner needs to probably come out and justify his reasons, in more than he did in the initial statement on Noel's appointment.
What did you make of his first interview with the club?
Yeah, look, I think he was honest. There's look, in fairness to Noel King, and you can't blame anyone for taking a good offer. He'll obviously back himself. Look, he's been involved. He made his home farm debut at 16 years of age. He's basically been in football his whole life. He was still involved with football. I think he was a director of football for the women's side of home farm since January. He'd obviously been coaching Chelsea ladies. To be fair, he's a decent CV in that if you said to most people, well, you'll manage the senior women's team of Ireland, you'll manage the under 21s of Ireland, there's a lot on a CV to admire, but yeah, I think it caught him as much surprise by anything. Like, he didn't apply for it. He wasn't expecting a call, not just from Dundalk. I don't think he was expecting a call from any club. And, to be fair, he's going to back himself, but, there's a lot of learning to do. I don't think he's someone who has been actively following the league. I made the point this week, with all due respect, if he was the new Dundalk senior women's team appointment, you'd say it makes sense because he's been most recently involved with Chelsea, and there's an element of, if you put him to the test and said how many current Bohemians men's players, just because the Dundalk are playing them on Friday, could he name? I guarantee he could probably name more the women's team. Now maybe not now, because they're obviously going to do their homework on him during the week, you'd imagine. But yeah, look, he's in a bit of a predicament too. But like anything, you can't blame a man for taking a good offer, because as well as anything else, I'm sure there's financial incentives, etc., to it as well. So, yeah, I feel for him a little bit in all this, because all he's done is just take something that was put to him, and it is still a good job, and because it's an 18-month deal, like I said, no matter who took this job, there's an element of I'd be asking, well, if I can't salvage this situation, I want next year at a crack to bring them back up from the first division. And that gives you that sort of, even if it starts off badly, it gives you a year guaranteed in management, which, you look at football around, not just in the League of Ireland terms, but around the globe, there's no long-term guarantees in any role. So it's lucrative in that regard, that you're getting a good crack at it. But where I think will come interesting, and I hope this isn't the case, but if another manager had come in on Friday and say Bows win 3-0, I don't think people would have been on their back straight away. Whereas I think if Bows win 3-0 this Friday, it's very much, the knives are out for Noel already, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it was in the press conference, someone referred to him as Bovril, if I think I'm correct. If someone called him, he's polarized his opinions, and that's and I think he said himself, like you were mentioning there, he was on a mission, his knowledge of the league is probably not as good maybe as it was previously. He's been out over 20 years. I think his last game was 2002-3 with Finn Harps. In terms of, I suppose, looking from the other side, the idea behind the King appointment, I think we were chatting before a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Dundalk, and maybe they're quite a nice team to look at, decent on the ball, have good possession in games, kind of classic Stevie O'Donnell team, but did lack a bit of firepower, maybe do lack a bit of plan B. In his press conference, he spoke about how he has a bit of a nasty streak in him. Is there something there for Dundalk fans to cling to? Maybe he is the appointment they need. I remember someone, I think it was on LI Central again, where they were talking about maybe the lack of firefighters in the league at Ireland these days. There's no one you kind of ring to, and there's no League of Ireland Sam Allardyce. There's no Sean Dyche you ring to get out of trouble. Is Noel King the nearest you could come up with for a short-term solution to be a League of Ireland Sam Allardyce to get you out of trouble, firefighting, 4-4-2, old school, back to basics kind of football? Is that what Dundalk maybe need at the moment, or am I reaching there?
Look, there's an element that this could all work, and maybe Brian Ainscoug's a genius, you know. So you can't rule that out. The man hasn't overseen a game yet. Like, you know, technically, if Dundalk go and beat Bows this Friday, it's one more win than anyone else managed with the team this season. So if they score, that's more than we managed at home this season. So I mean, the bar is sort of low in a way. Yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what way he approaches it, because to be fair, and listen, I follow football as much as anyone. I don't know what he's going to do, because it's been that long since he sort of managed certainly a men's team day to day. I wouldn't have been following Shell's ladies by my own admission in recent years, and maybe the style is a little bit different from the men's game to the women's game anyway. But yeah, look, it remains to be seen how he approaches it. It is, look, don't want to be ageist about it. It probably is going to be an old school approach, which, look, can have its merits. I just wonder, is that sort of player there? So, for example, if he wants to go 4-4-2 and, you know, go play the sort of Jack Charlton system of, you know, head it long, I don't know if we have the Quinn and Cascarino type player to you know, be knocking balls down, etc. So that certain things work when you have a certain personnel to sort of make it happen, but whether he does or not, look, it'll be interesting. Dundalk in a weird way, it's never been dull in recent years, so it certainly won't be dull following this. But like that, probably the last time there was sort of, I don't think it was as bad, although maybe it was, but a few years ago there was an unknown Italian appointed, and there was similar sort of, you know, outrage at that in Filippo Giovagnoli, and he won an FAI Cup and he took them to the group stage of the Europa League. So in a way, that you'd have to say that was a success. Now, it was with a lot better squad, a lot more established squad in terms of League of Ireland experience, etc. But he's now a bit of a cult hero in Dundalk. So, you know, if Noel King can come in and keep Dundalk in the Premier Division, you know, maybe he'll be fondly remembered for that.
You're saying there's hope for Europa League qualification in the next 2 years. That's what I'm hearing there today, James. That's the scoop.
I wouldn't. But listen, look, stranger things have happened. If you stay up this year, maybe you do, you know, reinvent yourself and go for it next year. But look, I think, look, if you're a Dundalk fan at the moment, realistically, you'd probably take the playoff spot. Right now, if you were offered it, anything above that, like if you can get to 8th, 7th, I don't know, you'd certainly take it. But it's not insurmountable. Like it may become insurmountable, but like it's only 3 points between Dundalk and Drogheda, for example, at the moment, and they play each other on the May bank holiday, on that bank holiday Monday. So, I mean, that's a huge game coming up. But you know, it's in theory, you know, a one good weekend for Dundalk and a bad weekend for Drogheda, and you're level on points with them, and then you can sort of look at the team above that again, whoever that is at that moment in time. But it's not like there's a, you know, 15-point gap to safety or anything just yet. So, like, as much as there's a bit of negativity around this, if you can get them, I suppose they have been a bit more difficult to beat in recent weeks. If he can retain that and somehow get them firing, because I say goals have been just such a problem that haven't even scored at home this season in the league in 5 matches. So if he can get something out of them in that regard, I don't think they're going to go and start, you know, trundling up the league and going 10-match unbeaten runs or anything. But you know, if they can start picking up points here and there, and even make Oriel Park a fortress, which it was under Stephen O'Donnell for the bulk of his tenure, that would go a long way to sort of, you know, keeping yourself in the mix to getting out of the position you're right dead last.
Yeah, I think that's probably one thing that goes in Dundalk's favour this year is due to the fact that the league is so tight that like everyone's taking points off each other, and despite the poor start of the year, obviously no wins in 11, they aren't that far away. A couple of wins in this league, and suddenly you're in 7th or 6th. Like, you've seen it, Bowes sacked their manager after 4 or 5 games, and suddenly we're in 3rd there to start last weekend. So again, it really does, like, a couple of wins in this league, and Noel King did address that. That one way to win over the fans is by getting a winning streak going, and suddenly all this negative press goes away.
Yeah, look, you reference it there yourself 100%. Bowes would have been deemed to have that dysfunctional start. Obviously did change manager and done a run of 3 in a row now. They're up to 2nd, and not that far off a Shell's team that everyone, including myself, the last time I was on speaking to you, were sort of half raving about. So it is funny, like, you can. There's these 3-game weekends where you play Friday, Monday, Friday at times, and if you come out of that with 9 points, it's huge. If you come out of it with 0, it's huge in the other respect. And you see it even at the opposite end of the table, where the teams vying for the sort of European places, and that they're, if they win those matches, they're right up there challenging. If they lose a couple of them, they're sort of they're losing ground a little bit. And you see that with the likes of Derry, I suppose, probably the prime example of anyone, where Rory Higgins probably the next man under pressure in many respects, and yet they're not that far off it either. But it's about getting that consistency going with them. But it's been an inconsistent league so far, and that could work into Dundalk's favour as well, because no one is really putting back-to-back wins together. And if you do, like Bows have done in recent weeks, you'll get the benefits of it. But equally, form can go the other way too, and you can start spiralling down the positions quite quickly too.
Yeah, I suppose, and just touch on the fans, probably I mentioned really, in terms of, say, this doesn't go well from the start, how long do you give, say, Noel King? Like, does he get 10 games, 12 games, this doesn't go well? Like, how quick could the fans really turn on this? Because this could become a really poor and bad situation in Royal Park if this doesn't start well.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, there was a few results under Stephen O'Donnell that just were deemed unacceptable. I suppose the one this season was that 5-0 thumping that Sligo dished out in Oriel Park at the start of March. I don't think Noel, given where he is in terms of popularity coming in, can afford something like that. He needs probably a good result early on. I was just reviewing it today. Dundalk managers don't tend to start well. It's 1996. John Hewitt was the manager since the last time a Dundalk manager won their first home league game at home, a permanent Dundalk manager, that is. So it's not, you go back through the Stephen Kennys, the Vinnie Perts, that people like that who won league titles, they didn't win their first game in charge. Stephen O'Donnell didn't win his first league game in charge. I don't think there's any honeymoon period here. I go back to, it's roughly 20 years ago now, when Jim Gannon came in and lost his first game 6-0 against Bray Wanderers after Trevor Anderson was sacked. And, the pitchforks weren't out then because it was deemed to be Anderson's squad, conferences at a low ebb, and look, give him time, etc. I don't think Noel King's going to get that sort of grace if things go bad. So he probably does need a start. But how long it's tolerated if results don't pick up, I don't know, because unlike the sort of Stephen O'Donnell situation, Stephen O'Donnell, while he did have a good relationship with Brian Ainscough, wasn't his man in terms of he didn't appoint him. So there's not that loyalty there. So does the owner dig the heels in and back his man? If things don't start off well, we don't know. But yeah, there's a real potential for friction here if the results don't pick up.
Yeah, and it doesn't have an easy start. Like as I said, we record Thursday night this week, and obviously Friday night is against Bowes at home. Then Shells come to town. But the game that really stands out to me is that 6th of May on the Monday night, or Monday afternoon, in it sounds like Hunky Doris Park. It's not Hunky Doris Park, Weavers Park now. In Drogheda, yeah. Like, that's a huge game in Louth. Like that's a game he can't lose.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying about the most recent results. Like, ordinarily, if you're struggling towards the bottom of the table and the team comes who are second in the league and say they beat you, it's not a disgrace, unless they absolutely hammer you or something. And equally, Shell's coming the week after, top of the table. If they beat you, it's not the be all and end all, like in terms of panic button stuff. But yeah, you certainly can't afford to. You probably need to win it, but you certainly can't afford to lose that Loud Derby. And that's the sort of game he'll be judged on. What doesn't help is, I suppose, and with all due respect to these sides, but most of the teams you'd expect Dundalk to be in or around in terms of the table come the finish up, in terms of the bottom half, they've already played at home. So like they played Galway at home, they played Sligo at home, they played Waterford at home, they played Drogheda at home. And, they're the sort of sides, with all due respect, you'd expect to be bottom half come the finish, and maybe one of them will surprise you, but I don't think I'll be very wrong in terms of that. And they've beaten none of them, so that now means that his home matches coming up are the more difficult ones, the likes of Bows, Rovers, Shells, Derry, etc. So the home matches aren't easy, and they wouldn't have been easy for no matter who came in. But yeah, like I say, if you're going to get out of it, you need to be picking up a point or two in a few of them, and trying to win the ones that the likes of that Drogheda game, because that's a huge swing in terms of momentum if you can get that first win there, if you don't have it already beforehand.
Last question before I let you go, James. Just in terms of the game on Friday, is there anything you're hoping to see, or is it just a case of maybe more threatening in front of goal? I know you spoke this numerous times right this year that they do look a bit lost to see sometimes in front of goal. Maybe attacking wise, obviously, it's a bit of an issue. Is that kind of one area that you want to see an improvement in? Maybe if Noel King puts some sort of way, even if that set pieces, to look like they can score a goal.
Yeah, look, we haven't seen a goal, Dundalk goal at Oriel Park this season, so seeing one of those would be great. Yeah, look, set pieces haven't been good. I would have been a critic of them that just haven't looked threatening from set pieces at all. Maybe that's something you can work on very quickly, coming in and let's see what you like from corners, let's see what you like from free kicks, and it'd be great to see initial things. I don't think, no matter who was getting the job, if it was this week, I don't think you can expect miracles in the space of 5 days, but just a bit of structure, a bit of, players playing for the manager, because I think most clubs that are in a sort of relegation battle when they change manager hope for that new manager bounce, and boy did Dundalk need it. So yeah, let's hope to see that.
James, as always, thanks for coming on with Shagging soon.
No worries. Cheers, look.
And before we go for this week, just a quick run through the fixtures in the SSE Airtricity League. Starting with the Premier Division, we have Shell St. Patrick, Dundalk Bows, Waterford Derry, Drogheda United Sligo, and Shamrock Rovers Galway, all on Friday night. In the First Division, we have Finn Harps Cork City, Treaty United UCD, Bray Wanderers against Kerry, Athlone Town Cove Ramblers, and Longford Town Wexford on Saturday. And finally, in the Women's Premier Division, we have Bows Treaty United, Peamount United Galway, Wexford Youth Shells, Sligo Rovers Cork, and Athlone Town Dealer Waves, all on Saturday. Oisin Lang will be back with the League of Ireland Voice Notes podcast in your podcast feed roughly around Saturday morning. Thanks to all our guests again this week. Thanks, James Rogers. Thank you for listening, and we'll chat to you all next week.